G'day guys, Dane here from Clarkey's NRL column. Welcome back to the round 10 wrap-up video. This is a weekly series, guys. Each week I pretty much go through and give a brief wrap-up of each game, the way I saw it, and the way I thought the games went down for the weekend. This video comes out every Monday. If you're interested in staying tuned throughout the year, this is the 10th installment. It'll be here all year. So Storm defeat the Tigers 24-22. For me, you can never count out the Melbourne Storm. There's too much experience in this team across the park, and eventually they will burn you. What we saw was a Storm team hell-bent on victory. And when they're that persistent, and they keep turning up, and you saw in their last set, they went the whole field with 3 minutes to go, and then eventually got the ball to Chambers to score. When they're that persistent, and they keep turning up, eventually there is just too much strike throughout that team and experience. Eventually they're going to cross. The Tigers learnt the hard way. And it was an unfortunate loss for the Tigers because arguably I thought they were the better side. This is the second time this year I've actually thought the Tigers were the better side and they went on to lose. The other game being the 9-8 loss to the Penrith Panthers. Tigers, they're a developing football team. They're very inconsistent at the moment. I think they need to keep working on their consistency, not just from game to game, but throughout the full 80. All throughout their season, there's sort of been these patches of dominance where the Tigers look fantastic, and then there's other periods where they really slacken off. So I think consistency is a must for this team. A stat that I found from the game, guys, Tigers, only 36 average meters per set, but they were mainly able to score their points off 8 errors from the Melbourne Storm and 10 penalties. Again, only 36 average set meters. That's pretty poor for 6 tackles. I think that shows how defensively sound the Melbourne Storm are. One thing I like from the Melbourne Storm, I liked big Christian Welch being cleared of an ACL. He has meniscus damage to his knee, so instead of his season being over, he'll only miss 4 to 6 weeks. Great news for Welchie. And for the Tigers, I liked their defense for 70 minutes. I didn't like it in the last 10, but if you forget that last 10-minute period, which I know is hard to do, given that was where they lost, I did think there was some positives to take out of that game. Warriors, guys, defeat the Panthers 30-10. This was a great win by a Warriors side that is just desperate to find some consistency. One real positive I took out of this game for them is Nick Arima. I really think his style of footy suits the Warriors. He's the sort of player that doesn't particularly like playing to structure. He is an eyes-up halfback that plays what's in front of him. And when you have a forward pack like the Warriors that aren't afraid to throw the offload out the back, it creates more opportunities for Nick Arima to implement sort of his natural game plan. And I think we're seeing him really develop. I think he'll thrive in the Warriors system. Panthers, another week, another Panthers loss. Every week I'm coming to you guys, I'm trying to make excuses for this club, but I think I'm all out. I will say, if they want to rejuvenate their season, I don't care what they've done in the past. I don't care what other teams have done in the past. I don't care statistically, mathematically, what chance they are. It needs to start next week. It just needs to. If it doesn't start next week, I'm so close to putting a line through this team. In fact, I probably already have. Stat. Again, 52 missed tackles for the Panthers. Now, I'm beginning to sound like a broken record at this point. Every week I come to you guys, and I'm not sure if that just froze there on mine, or if that's freezing for the recording. If that is freezing for the recording, I do apologize. 52 missed tackles for the Panthers. Now, as I said, I'm beginning to sound like a broken record, but you just cannot win football games and consistently be missing 40, 50 tackles. You just can't. That is 52 opportunities they allowed the Warriors to score, and it doesn't matter if it's the Warriors or the Eels from 2018. You give a team that many chances, they're going to burn you eventually. Warriors, I've spoken about him before. Nick Arima, I think he's really finding his feet. I think he'll continue to improve and really find his identity as a playmaker within the Warriors. And for the Panthers, I liked Brian Tu'u's NRL debut. He's an awesome young bloke, and he's on my Instagram story today at clarkeys.nrl column if you want to ask him a question or look at some of his answers for the fans. All right, this was probably one of the more surprising games of the round. The Broncos defeat the Roosters 15-10. Great win for a young Broncos side. I thought their defense needs to be commended. It was absolutely incredible to hold the reigning premiers to only 1 try throughout 80 minutes when they have weapons in their back line like Joey Manu, Latrell Mitchell, Ryan Hall, Tedesco, Keary. There is so many dangerous players in this back line, and for this young Broncos team to hold them to 1 try is remarkable. Now, I don't want to take anything away from the Broncos, but I do feel the Roosters looked a little flat here. Perhaps that was a little bit complacent on their part, given they are having such a successful season, but I'll put it down to fatigue. They had a 5-day turnaround, and this is the second time in a fortnight they've had to travel to Suncorp. Not only that, you go back to their last week against the Raiders, they had to dig deep, and they had a lot of injuries. I think that took a little bit out of the Chooks, and a young, enthusiastic, energetic Broncos side that hasn't had to travel for the past fortnight was able to capitalize on that. But as I said, I don't want to take anything away from the Broncos. Stat, 69% completion and only 41% possession for the Roosters. Factor in, guys, 15 errors also. Now, that error count is not uncharacteristic for the Roosters. In fact, last year, they led the competition in errors despite winning it. But I think the errors this year not only show complacency, but I don't think they can afford it. They have a tag on them now, and everyone turns up when they verse the reigning premiers. That's where you test yourself, you see where you're at. And when you're giving up 15 errors per game with only 69% completion, you make it near next to impossible to win that game. The fact they stayed within 1 try, or a converted try, is pretty remarkable in itself. Broncos, I liked Payne Haas. Most meters in the game by 60 plus. I think the nearest was Tedesco from the Roosters. Absolutely incredible. And for the Chooks, I like Christian Crichton. My apologies. I liked Angus Crichton. He played the full 80. I thought it was his best game all season. Alright, this is a game you guys obviously know I didn't like watching at all. Bulldogs defeat the Titans 22-16. Bulldogs were resilient. They shown a lot of poise to strike this sort of comeback. They weathered the early storm by the Titans, and they wore them down with a grinding sort of style of footy. And more importantly, they were able to capitalize off the Titans' errors. Again, I don't want to take anything away from the Bulldogs, but I feel this was more so due to the Titans being terrible as opposed to the Bulldogs playing a really exceptional sort of brand of football. So I'll move on to the Titans. Look, just shocking. Second week in a row where they have failed to score any points in the second half. Their spine lacks any directional leadership, and this has been exposed every single game past the 20-minute mark. They can start fine, they can get in the game, but they cannot hold a lead because they don't have an established leader in their spine that is able to manage the game. How's this for the stats? Dogs were the poorer team. They had 11 penalties. They had 14 errors. They had 33 missed tackles. They had lower possession and completion percentage rates. When you have all that against you in a game of football, yet you still win, for me, that highlights a distinct lack of leadership from the Titans side of house, and it's something Garth Brennan needs to not only shore up quickly, but he needs to assess it instantly, and whether that is dropping his $1 million man Ashley Taylor to Queensland Cup, I don't know. But as I said, it's not often in a game of rugby league. Every single stat goes against you, but you still pull off a 6-point win. So, Dogs, I like Jaden Ockenbaugh's double. Big fan of this guy. I love what he's about, and I'd like to see him move into the back row at one stage in his career. I believe he's played a bit of back row coming through the grades. He reminds me of a Nigerian Corey Oates, and he's an awesome fella. For the Titans, Wallace. 200 metres with Origin around the corner. I think he played probably his best game of the year, and it's no doubt given the timing. Alright guys, Cowboys topple the Eels at home, 17-10. Excellent performance by the Cowboys, possibly their best all year. It's still not a polished final product, but they're definitely making steps. I really like Asiata at 6, as opposed to a Jake Clifford or a Tamir Martin. And that's a little bit strange, but for me, Johnny Asiata is not the long-term solution for the club. But short-term, he's able to contribute to that platform that's being laid by their dynamic forward pack of Tamalolo, Matt Scott, Cohen Hess, Cooper, etc., etc. And when he does that, it really allows Morgan to capitalize on all the opportunities. He's the main man, and Asiata really knows his role is more so a running 5'8", possibly a backline ball here and there, and also a nice short kicking game. When you hand that much responsibility to Michael Morgan, he thrives. We saw it in 2017, and we're seeing it this year. Now he's been named the captain. For the Eels, the big question was, how do they respond from a 50, 60-point thrashing? Now, I don't think they were that terrible, but again, I think they a little bit lackluster in attack. I wouldn't say they were exposed, but let's just say I expected a lot more. I thought the side would be very galvanised by the re-signing of not only their coach, but their captain. But that wasn't the case. And when I looked at this game, I thought they got dominated up the middle. And I didn't think they had a real leader within that forward pack. Years ago, it was Tim Manor, and I mean this with respect to Timmy, but that was years ago. He's coming off the bench now. He's no longer that leader for the Eels. That leader for the Eels for me is Nathan Brown. And for me, he can't return quick enough for the Eels. They need him badly now. They need a leader in the middle. Cowboys, 60 more runs, 300 more meters, 150 more post-contact meters. This led to more than double missed tackles for the Eels. When you're having that many more runs, that many more meters, eventually you're going to start falling off tackles. And I think that really paints the picture that the Cowboys were able to win the middle here and allow Michael Morgan to capitalise off the back of that. Cowboys, I like Jason Taumalolo. I don't need to say anything. He is incredible. The most tackles, the most meters. Take a bow. Eels, I liked Reid Marnie. 60 tackles. I'm loving this guy's game at the moment. I think he's a future Origin player for the Maroons. In fact, he's there for me this year, but I don't think many people agree with that. But that's just my opinion. All right, Rabbitohs defeat the Raiders 16-12. Again, the Rabbitohs do their job. Only one loss all year this year, guys, and that was a 1-point loss to Manly. As long as this side keeps winning, it's impossible for us to fault them. So we'll move on to the Raiders. Only one try, and I think they probably lacked in attack a little bit, and they have all year. But what they're lacking in attack, they're really making up for with their defense. Only leaking 2 tries to the Rabbitohs, who've been absolutely scoring tries like it's going out of fashion this year. Look, it was a big fortnight for the Raiders against the Roosters. Rabbitohs, I know they lost both games, but I thought they were great. I've actually written a column on that today as to why I think they're legitimate contenders if you want to check that out after this video. Stats for this game, all very similar. Only really stat of note is 7 offloads to the south, and they're too dangerous around the middle to be doing that. You got Cam Murray, you got Burgess, you got the Burgess brothers, you got Damien Cook, and guess what? If they get the ball out wide, you got Cody Walker coming at you. So, they're too dangerous to be allowing that. Rabbitohs, I like Cody Walker scoring again. He really does deserve an Origin debut. Raiders, a lot of positive for the clubs despite 2 losses in a row. If you want a more depth analysis of that, as I said, the column is on my pages now. Knights, 45-12. Wow. I thought the Knights would win, but I didn't think they'd win this convincingly. I think that's 3 or 4 in a row for the club now. I believe it's 4 in a row, and they're absolutely flying. They got the Roosters this week. Mitchell Pearce, 4 man-of-the-match efforts in a row. Can he repeat it again against his former club at his new home ground? It's a must-watch game for me. Dragons, they're in a tough spot at the moment, and I think it's because too much responsibility is falling on Ben Hunt. And I mean this respectfully, Ben Hunt thrives with a little bit of pressure, but when the pressure piles too much for Ben Hunt, typically, what I've seen from his career at least, analysing from the couch, whilst I eat McDonald's, so, I don't think Hunt will care too much what I've got to say. He just doesn't handle loads of responsibility. Some big moments, I'm sure you all remember the grand final. I'm sure you remember Origin last year when he grubbered it out. Now, they're only one instance, but they're big, big moments. And when you can't own those big, big moments, you come back to your club, and from what I've seen at least since Widdop and Norman have been out, Hunt has struggled a little bit. He has still been the main man, and last week he was possibly the best man for the Dragons on the field. But I stand by my statement. I don't think he handles buckets loads of pressure, as well as some players do anyway. Stat. Knights broke 36 tackles and made 6 line breaks. They had 9 offloads and over 500 more meters. It was an offensive onslaught, and those stats really paint it. Dragons, 88% tackle efficiency rating. Very good considering the offensive stats I just threw up. A lot of teams would crumble and you'd be seeing about a 70 or 60% there. And last game for the round, guys. Sorry I've kept you for 15 minutes now. Hopefully you have enjoyed what I've had to say. Sea Eagles defeat the Sharks 24-14. Incredible work by Manly. They just keep finding a way despite these injuries. Des Hasler is a remarkable coach. He has reinvented himself, and at this stage, he is Coach of the Year. For more on that, I've written another interesting column on that today if you want to check out. My headline was, sorry Trent, your time as a coach is spent. Come with that little rhyme at work, but it goes into some interesting facts there on what's going on at Manly. And the Sharks, well, they were far from their best. They tried to go jab for jab with the Manly Sea Eagles, but ultimately the Sea Eagles just had a few more extra, I guess, ounces in their punches, if that makes sense. The Sharkies have been a little bit complacent for a while now and sort of relied on these big second half comebacks. Perhaps this is the kick in the butt they need to really step up their game. Stat, 11-5 penalty count in favour of the Sharks. Now, this will be a little bit controversial, but I always feel the Sharks lead the penalty count whilst they're at PointsBet, formerly Shark Park. They have very vocal fans, and whilst the referees will never admit it, I think that influences their decision a little bit. I'm not saying they hear Bob from friggin' stand 5 yell out, oh, that's a penalty, and go, oh yeah, you're right, Bob. I'm saying they hear the noise, and that makes them look a little bit more sharper, pay a little bit more attention to that ruck, and because there's so much external noise, they feel pressured to sort of make a call, or just that extra focus there makes them a little bit sharper on the whistle than they may be at other home grounds. Only my opinion. For the Sea Eagles, I liked Adam Fanua-Blake. How about Tonga this year, guys? They have Fafita, Tamalolo, Adam Fanua-Blake, and Sia Takiaho. They are the 4 probably in-form forwards in the competition. That is absolutely huge for the club. Wow. He had 1 try, 168 metres and 2 line breaks. Big effort from the 23-year-old front rower. And Sharkies, it was kind of hard to pick something here because they were so far from their best, but I liked Braden Ueli. Hamlin, he scored again. Look, this is a breakout season for this guy. He's been touted for a little bit in the grades for the last couple of years, and I really think he's coming of age, and I really like what I'm seeing from him so far this year. Thanks so much for watching the wrap-up, guys.